So if I was painting some simple strap leaves, for instance, what I've recently been doing on some snowdrops, you could just pop in some leaves like this, very simply, any old how, some crossing over, and you've got a painting of some leaves, like some bulbs coming out of the ground, etc. But then they're all the same tone, and it's very difficult to distinguish one leaf from the other. So what we tend to do is pop a darker shade onto a part of a leaf that crosses behind another leaf, or where it may possibly be blocking the light on another leaf. And there's all sorts of ways you can do this. None of them are incorrect, and it has to suit your style. So I've do a really simple leaf to start with, which is just single one like this. But then, just for a variety, we'll turn the top down, because quite a few leaves turn over as they come towards you. They curl under, over, all sorts of things, as you will be aware if you take a look at leaves in your local area. So we could have that one coming right forward. We could have a short, tiny little overlap at the top, where it's just a little tip. You get the idea. So have a little bit of time just painting some leaf shapes. They can be any ones you like, but I'm doing bulb leaves because it's that time of year. I'm just enjoying the paint, not thinking too hard about it, and I'm using a nice yellow green here. So it's light, it's sunny, it suggests spring, doesn't it? And I could easily pop some snowdrops on there. So whilst that's drying, let me just show you a little bit of fun I had with some snowdrops without any leaves. So just because we're doing leaves today, I just got into the motion of doing the snowdrop flowers on this painting, and I enjoyed the pattern so much that I decided just to focus on the flowers and to ignore the leaves. But if we go in close on one or two of these flowers, you can see that I've shaded the petals that are in the background ever so slightly, so they appear to be further back than the ones that are protecting the ones behind. So these ones here are lighter than the one in the middle, which is further back and shaded by them. So shading gives you all sorts of effects, and it is really worth trying to get your head round some of it so that you can make your pictures come more to life. So the first shade that we're going to try is going to be blue. So I've just got some good old ultramarine blue into a nice weak wash there, because I don't want to overload my shadow to look too heavy. I would say that depending on what your first colour is, you have to think about the colour you're going to put over the top, because what I'm doing is a glaze. I'm glazing blue over green. So will that work? What will happen to the yellow green? It will become more of a blue green, which will cool it down. So that in itself is quite handy for shadows. So let me just try negative painting this leaf here that's crossing over the one that is supposedly behind it. And just for making it easy to see where that leaf goes, I'll go along the top as well. So I'm cooling this leaf down because I'm adding blue to it. And the blue is just simply a glaze over the top of the original dry paint, which I have cheated and used a hairdryer, which is why there's some marks, etc. down here, because I rushed it. And we all know that watercolour doesn't like to be rushed. So I'm just softening out these edges here, just to try and let the paint do its thing without a stark line. Now, sometimes shadows do have a very strong line, but I would urge you to just be cautious of having too strong edges on certain things, unless it's something where there is such sort of cut glass, for instance. Casting shadows might well have quite hard edges on the shadows. So this leaf hasn't got anything crossing in front of it. I could guess where my light's coming from. Don't worry too much about this, but I'm going to say it's coming from here, because after all we have cloudy days where the light isn't really coming from any particular direction. It's just sort of just about managing to get through the clouds all over. But my shadow on this leaf I would probably do down one side to give the impression that the light is stronger on this side than on the other side. And at the same time you can also lift out to highlight an area. So that's now looking lighter that side and darker that side. So the blue does a good job. It's useful in its way. It's the first thing people think of shadows generally as being a blue type of colour. So if you use blue in your shadows, that's fine, that's fine. You just have to work out what works for you. So here I've got two leaves crossing. So this is where you have to think, well, if the light's coming from here, where would the shadow be? And again, don't get yourself worked up about this. It's just not worth worrying too much about it. But this time I'm going to pick up a different background colour, and I'm going to make sure my brush is completely clear of blue. And I've picked up a grey, a straight out of the pan grey. Haven't mixed it with any colours. So a lot of people would reach for a grey because it's in their palette, and a grey shadow perhaps might work. So let's have a look. So I've got the grey on, which is quite strong, isn't it? So looking back, I could probably have got away with a lot less in my mix. Again, I'm just taking it away from that central area because that's where the leaves are crossing. So you can see that it gives you the impression of a shadow being cast from this leaf onto the leaf underneath it, maybe. Is it as effective as the blue? Well, only you can decide that. But we don't just leave it here. There are other ways to look at shadow colours. So taking our trusty colour wheel, here's our yellow-green leaves, which is quite obviously a yellow-green. What is opposite yellow-green? It's a red-violet. And in your palette, that would tend to be an alizarin crimson. Whereas the cadmium red, which is the next one to the right there, is going to be that a little bit further round to the warm. So your crimson of any description is opposite yellow green. What happens when you mix complementary colours? You end up with a grey. So let's see what happens if I pop some crimson over the top on a different leaf. So we'll do this one over here that's tilted over. So I'm going to pop the crimson under there and pull it down. Now red of any description is always stronger than another colour, so you bear that in mind when you're popping your red on. And just softening that edge away. So we've got a shadow. It's not particularly dark, it's a warm shadow, so it does work, and as it settles into the paint, the yellow green is going to work with the crimson and grey the red down a little bit. Now we could try that again, but this time have even less crimson in the mix, so a little bit more water. Let's try that once more here and just get that edge on there. Take it down. So we've got a leaf crossing here, so let's use that and take our shadow all the way down there. So we've dulled that green right down and given the effect of a shade area there. But you probably have noticed that the grey and the blue are darker than the red is. So if you wanted a complementary shadow, how does that work if it's a lighter colour? So red's really a mid-tone, and we're opposite our yellow green here. But if we were to push it round towards the blue, which is under here, if we pushed our red violet towards the blue, so we add more blue to this, we could go down towards the violet. That will give us a little bit more depth and darkness to our shadow. So all I need to do to achieve that is take my alizarin crimson and then mix in some ultramarine blue. It's a little bit thick there. I've just got to be aware I don't want to have it too dark. You can always glaze again, but it's very hard to glaze and then have it too thick to start with. So I've made a violet. It's a reddy violet. So let's use that one on this leaf here. And immediately, can you see it's a little bit darker because we've now added the blue into that crimson colour. And by adding the blue in, we've darkened that colour down. So immediately we have a more obvious shade area. But it is still a red violet. And that has really dulled down that yellow green, hasn't it? Can you see that? So what I'm putting on is quite pink, and what's showing is quite grey. So pop it right underneath there. So for me personally, the complementary colour mix, or just off complement, so a direct complement, which you can see this complementary line here, is the red violet, which is our alizarin crimson, and a yellow green. But that isn't dark enough. It didn't really work as much as I wanted it to. So I pushed this that way. I added some blue, which, as I say, is just tucked under here. Added some blue to my violet, pushing it round that way. So we're round about here. Let's have a look and see. So that colour, we're about right. Push any more blue in and we'll end up as a blue violet, which is ultramarine blue essentially. By pushing a little bit of blue into our red, we've ended up with a lovely grey colour there. So for me personally, painting the leaves again, I would be using my violet to give me the shadows on the leaves. So let's try that in practice. Have some leaves, just simple shapes. Don't need to do many to get the idea of this. But do have a look at some real leaves if you can. Get a feel for how they sit together, how they cross over, how you want your picture to work. Have some curved ones by all means, but just get that colour down. This way, when you're painting leaves, you won't be daunted by having so many things happening that everything mashes together. You can think about how you can separate the leaves by negative painting them. So I'm just going to get this dry. All dry, and I'm going to go from my violet mix, which is a red violet, add some more ultramarine blue into it. Add a little bit more crimson into it, make a nice rich violet there, so it's gone slightly bluer than the first time I did it. So you can just add a little bit more red in there. The more blue in something, the darker it will be, and that's why people use the pre-mixed greys, because they are dark. So there's nothing to stop you using them here, but it's nice to vary it. So we'll just get started. Let's do this one here. There's the underneath where it turns away from the light, like so. This one here is going to be complicated, isn't it? Well, it is and it isn't. It's up to you where you want these things to go. So we could start by painting negatively behind that part there, because this is in shadow, and then maybe this one's crossing in front. so we can keep that whole leaf going down to the ground pretty much in shadow. Just soften the edge now, so it's coming out here. There you go. Take it a little bit. Can you see the colour I'm putting on bears no resemblance to the colour that is appearing, because the two combined in a glaze are making a very nice grey violet, which is lovely. So this just makes your colour mixing a bit more interesting. It also means you're using the colours in your palette, you're not adding something else in. And this bit's just dried slightly too quick. There we go. Remnants of my hairdryer still kept the paper warm. So I'm just popping that one in there because that would be shaded from that leaf there. And then soften that away. Getting some runbacks, etc., but that's fine. So you can see that one there. Again, we need that backwards, so just to show you, I'm picking up this bluey red violet and I'm going to tuck that in here, and immediately we've got a turn on that leaf. It's so easy, it really is. It feels daunting when you first do it, but just play around with leaf shapes. Think about where the light source is, but don't get bogged down with it, because nobody wants to spend their whole day worrying about where the light's coming from. Just do enough to get it sort of right. So let's say that leaf is shading that one. These can be really, really thin washes. You do not have to put lots and lots of paint on. It's just a tiny amount. It's quite a nice, relaxing thing to do. This one, I'm going to just pop the shadow and underneath because it's going across. Now if I do it here, this is still wet, so I'm going to be thinking ahead here. So I'm going to come across there, and there we go. Just tickle that round there, as if that leaf itself has a shadier base to it. Now I need to let that dry before I do any more. You get the idea. Layer it up and see what sort of pictures you can build. It's so much more interesting. But if you have got your grey already in your palette, let me just make sure I've got the clean grey here. There we go. So that you can see is probably a Payne's grey because it looks quite bluey. So you can always add your grey to your colour mix, as long as your grey is fairly neutral, not biased too far one way or the other. You can use grey. I'm not saying to you please don't use it, I'm just saying think about how you use it. So I've popped that grey into there, made a nice shadow colour. So let's see what happens if we put that over this one. So it's very much more greyer as it goes on, a little bit less colourful, but it does work. So if you want to use grey, by all means use grey, but I would suggest you then pop some of the colour in that you want to get the effect of, and in this case it was my red violet that I'd previously used. As I said, I'm doing very, very pale washes here just to get a feel for how much depth I actually need on these leaves to give the impression that they are 3D. Now I'm going to put another layer on here so you can layer it up. Just pulling that out. Probably got some quite a large brush for such a small area, but hey. And there we go. I hope that helped you. Thinking about trying to make a simple yellow leaf 3D. We started off with our bright yellow leaves that we tried blue, which obviously made a bluey green. Then we put simple grey on, which is quite flat. Then we tried the opposite on the colour wheel, which was crimson, which was okay, but not very dark. and a little thinner wash because that was quite thick, and then we added a little bit of blue into it and got a slightly more neutral colour there rather than the pink. And then we went over here, took that idea further and created a little miniature study with some shadows in various parts of the leaves. So I challenge you to give it a go. This was a painting I've done on a previous video, and I'll make sure the link's there if you want to give it a go. It's done in 2 colours, and all I've done as these leaves turn here and turn here, you can see that I've done the shadow colour, which is just very much a darker version of what I've started with here. So keeping it very simple, it just gives the impression that this is in front of this. That's all you're trying to do. The same here, this is darker and in front of this. But they are very similar colours because this painting only has 2 colours to start with. If you then compare those with this small study, watercolour on canvas, where I've done absolutely no shadows at all, haven't quite got that far, I can now give this realism and depth by adding some shadows to various parts of the leaves rather than just leaving them as green strips, which works, but they could be better. So that's my little project now. I hope you enjoyed that. See if you can do some shadows on some leaves or any other foliage you can find. So look for the turns and where it's darker or where something is shading it from the light above, and see if you can create some colourful shadows. Good luck, and I'll see you all on the next video. Happy painting, and bye for now.